are watching Leicester Till I Die TV.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform.
Or ask your smart speaker
To play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Right, Chris.
All right, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, good day, goodbye. Hello, welcome along. It's early for us. It's 5:04 p.m. I've got to get used to that for the radio shows. And it's sunny. It is sunny. What dark cloud could hang over this beautiful early summer day? Yes. You know what it is. It's the Cardigan Man. Wasn't that a film? I think it was the Cardigan Man. Yes, apparently, according to Rob Tanner, and if you didn't see it last night, please do go over and watch it. We are only a few days off knowing who the next Leicester City manager is, and we're going to be talking about one in particular today. But before we do that, this is, of course, LTID TV from Leicester Till I Die. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and, of course, YouTube. And if you are listening via your favourite podcast platform, whether that be YouTube, Google, Spotify, Apple iTunes, or any of the other ones that we are on at all, thank you for lending me your ears. And if you've got smart speakers, just say, play the podcast Leicester Till I Die, and you will be able to listen to us. And look, there they all are, all our socials, either under LTID TV, most of them now, or there's one or two that have been set up that long that I can't change that are Leicester Till I Die. But search one of the two and you will find us all over the place to follow. So thank you so very much for doing that. Yes, what can we say? Scott Parker. Snog, marry, or avoid. What would you do? I certainly wouldn't believe snogging him. I don't think I'd want to marry him particularly, but somebody who had no choice and had to, let's bring him in. And, well, he's still Premier League, but we are now obviously not Premier League. Craig, good evening, sir. How are you?
Hello, Chris. I'm very, very well. Looking forward to getting back to action. We have got the fixtures announced tomorrow, so we'll see who we're pitted up against.
Oh, does that have the fixtures for what exactly?
That is for the Premier League. I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh, do you mean this?
The Premier League? That's so last season. It's all about the Championship here on LTID TV.
Now that's what I call football.
You hit the right spot.
Yes, it is. Do you know what?
I love that jingle.
The Championship is a great league, but I tell you what, you've experienced something that, most fans will never experience with their club. And, I tell you what, it's an amazing story. And, I'm gutted that you've gone down, because it'd be nice to have seen you extend your stay, because you're effectively against the grain, aren't you, really? And that's the way I see it, is because everybody sees Liverpool.
I think we gave everybody else that wasn't a huge club, and we're not a huge club even with what we've managed. I think we just gave everybody else the dream and the hope that it could be done. And that's what football's, if you're in the, Notts County or, a team like that, they can still dream that one day it may happen to them. And I think that's what we gave everybody. Of course, what you've given everybody, because you sacked him, is that guy there, Scott Parker, saint or sinner. Look, before we get on to him, let's just say a few hellos, because the messages have been coming in like mad since before we started. Lorraine, I think we found Scott Parker's #1 fan here. Come on, do the job, Scott, from Lorraine. Sean says hi. Blue Fox says hi all. Also, does this mean there's no stream tonight? Yes, there is a stream tonight, but that's about transfer. So we'll be talking about that at 8 o'clock tonight. But this one is about the Cardigan Man. I'm sure that was a film. Wasn't that a Lawnmower Man? But there we go. There we go. Near enough. How is your summer, Chris? Well, my summer's got a big, huge black cloud hanging over it at the moment. The name needs to go. Sherman Bristol's finest. I'm getting confused here. Dan's in. Dan. Oh, Scott Parker will be the man to spearhead Leicester to promotion. Happy with it. If he's not got the job, and I was speaking to Rob Tanner, who has been a local reporter in Leicester. I think you popped on the show, didn't you?
Yes, I did, yeah.
He's the athletic guy. And look, I didn't just say this because he's on. I'm going to say it now. He is one of along with Fabrizio, he's the one guy that I trust when it comes to information about Leicester. He doesn't, he's not going to put it up and say, I'm going to get the manager's job or something like that. And he did give me a hint as to who it might be, but I have been promised, because he did have a meeting yesterday at the club, but I can't say. Mm-hmm. You'd have to get me really, really drunk. They want to pull their finger out. The window is open. It is, but of course we have got Martin Glover, who is the recruitment manager that was fun enough at Southampton. This time last season he was on gardening leave, which was one of the problems. He isn't now, so the manager, whoever comes in as the new manager, will be back to pre-Brendan times, which was basically it will be part of the team. So we don't need the manager in. Doug is in. Good evening, Doug. How are you? It's Dan. Avoid. Yes. Is anybody going to marry him? I don't think so. We'd rather have Parker from Thunderbird. Tell Talk to give me a call. I'll step in and sort the mess out. And I'll try and sort it. You've got your own messes in the corner, mate, where you piss up the wall. So don't be coming with your, don't be bringing your burning messes to Leicester. Park will be good in the Championship. He doesn't have a league record, but that's something we're going to be coming on to. Thunder, are you going to buy him? Oh, they're all talking about each other there. Would you take Scott Parker, Chris? You know what? I'd sooner take a dose of syphilis. That is how. Does that answer the question? Leicester for Life is in. Hi. Look, let's come first of all, because we are talking about Scott Parker, and I did have, before we took Dean Smith on last season, and there's the rumours we're going to take Jesse Marsh on, I had Carl, the Leeds fan, on, and he was very scathing. I was hoping to get a Fulham fan on, but unfortunately he's working, so he can't. But you had Parker.
Yes.
You sacked Parker. He replaced Woodgate, didn't he, for yourselves, if my homework's correct?
Yep, he did.
And Wikipedia is correct as well, that I've got open here. What were your thoughts? I mean, how was it going under Woodgate?
Well, if we go back a little bit further than that, to the season we was relegated from the Premier League, Scott Parker was always the number one choice of Maxim Denham and the board. So Neil Blake, Richard Hughes. And of course, Parker, if he hadn't got promoted with Fulham, it would have been likely that he would have joined the club then. As it happened, they won against Brentford at an empty Wembley. And therefore, that's why Jason Tindall was appointed. Jason Tindall, of course, great coach, not particularly a manager. And Woodgate...
History at Bournemouth, though, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got a long history at Bournemouth. He is a really good friend of Eddie Howe's. Of course, he's at Newcastle now, so he seems to follow Eddie where he goes. It's a shame it didn't work out for him. I think what he was trying to do, and this is why I do want to mention, of course, Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe was always a case of, we want to score one more than you. And Jason Tindall was like that as well.
Yeah.
He followed that exact path. The problem with Jason Tindall was when it went wrong, he didn't know the answers to that, which eventually ended in his sacking. So Jonathan Woodgate come in and steadied the ship. But one thing I would say was he was a lot more defensive than, what Tindall was, what Howe was. So we managed to get ourselves across the line, get ourselves into the playoffs. It wasn't Woodgate's fault why we lost in the playoff semi-finals against Brentford. We won the first leg. He did a proper job on Brentford. In the second leg, we was leading. Chris Metham did something really ridiculous, pulled down Mwembo, got sent off. Whole game completely changed. Of course, Brentford went through. So that was really Woodgate. I think he was hard done by, because personally, I think Woodgate, had done a decent job. But Parker become available. Fulham got relegated. Parker wanted to come, and they got their man this time round. Why I refer back to that is Parker kind of followed the path of what Jonathan Woodgate did. A lot more defensive, and I'll exaggerate on that a bit more. But when he first got here, and I know I mentioned off air, at the start of the season, in the Championship, we got 37 points from the first 15 games, which is an incredible haul. To be honest, I thought that we was potentially going to get the record for the Championship, which is 106 points. We didn't do that. We didn't get anywhere near because of Parker. And what in my mind, the reason why he was so successful at the start of the season was because he had so many players out. He was up against it. He was having to play the likes of Gavin Kilkenny, Zeno Ibsen-Rossi, Jordan Zamora, Jayden Anthony. All these players hadn't had first-team starts at that point. So he was right up against it. We started the season against West Brom, did well against them, and then built up from there. And I thought, personally, well, we're going to win this league at Acanton, because this is what a makeshift side can do. We're still waiting for players to come back, and hit the ground running. As soon as those players started coming back, the wheels fell off, because Parker went, as you saw, against Liverpool, against Arsenal, not so much against Man City last season, but he went too defensive. And that's all well and good, if you can manage that well. But to be honest, we never have. You look at the game against Derby in the Championship, we were beaten by Derby away from home. There was a whole list of them. One of the worst games, actually, on the 15th of March, we was 1-0 up at half-time against Reading. We should have been about 5 up. And then Scott Parker at half-time, I just don't understand what he was doing. He decided to make a number of changes. And this was what did Todd Cantwell in, really. He decided to hook Todd Cantwell off. And then all of a sudden, we were lucky to scrape a draw in that game. So tactically, he's so naive. But you look at the games where, he went defensive. There was that run, that Derby game, that 3-2 defeat by Derby, started a run which, lasted from the start of November to after Christmas without a win. And we were conceding goals every single game. So although we did have a good defensive record, in the Championship. And you can't take that away from Scott Parker. He did get the job done. He got us across the line. It should have been a lot more comfortable than it was. And it's because he went defensive. He was tactically naive. You could even go towards the end of the season. The last 3 games, well, being fair to him, actually, the last 6 games, he managed quite well, apart from Swansea. So, of course, those last 6 games of the season, we beat Coventry 3-0 away from home. That was a good result. Blackburn, we beat 3-0 away from home. Another good result. Of course, the Forest game, I don't need to really go into that in much detail. I'd probably go on about that till the cows come home. And, of course, the Millwall game. But that Swansea game, we were 3-0 down. And the reason why we was 3-0 down is unlike what Eddie Howe would do, which is try and win that game, Scott Parker went out not to lose it. And of course, by doing that, ended up, well, to be honest, if it wasn't down to Kiefer Moore, we would have lost that game because we invited too much pressure on. Of course, Swansea at the time had Piero and Obafemi Martins, who, 2 very, very good players. And
it does sound very much like a Rodgers number 2.
I said that.
Yeah, we don't. I dread. We don't want Rodgers number 2. I mean, when you look at Leicester, and I think I put up there. I think he's a Marmite manager, and if just Leicester fans, I know there's going to be a couple of fans, some of the clubs taking part. They're doing the chat. But try if it's just Leicester fans can just vote. Do you want Parker as our next manager? Don't want like Luke Forest fan going yes because you hate us. What I mean? It will happen. If Leicester fans can vote on that, and we'll come back to that at the end. But when we took Claude Puel from Southampton, all the Southampton, and he'd got them to a final. I think with Southampton League Cup final, they lost it to United. But all the Southampton fans were going, "You'll be bored. Don't take him. He's awful," And Leicester for life. See, I think it's 1 or 2 fans. Some of the clubs being a little bit funny. Then we've got 67% saying yes. I think that's. I thought that might happen. We might ignore it if it gets too silly from people voting. But look, and I think when a manager comes, and that was one of the things they said about Jesse Marsh when he came, and all the fan base was going, "We don't want him, oh my God, no," and it was all over social media. They say that was one of the decisions that probably helped the board decide not to go for him. I mean, he allegedly turned it down as well. And I think hopefully that will have the same effect here. But I think if a manager comes in, and you've always got to say whoever comes in, look, give them a chance. You've got to say that in fairness because you don't know it's good. Look at Ranieri. Sometimes it can just click. He's. I just wonder if it's. What were the Bournemouth fans? I mean, was it split like that when he came to Bournemouth, and how was he received? Because I think if a manager comes in, with half the fan base not wanting him, it's a pretty difficult job.
When he arrived, I was fairly optimistic, and the reason why I was optimistic is what he did at Fulham, getting them back out the Championship through the playoffs. I didn't really look into Fulham so much that season, and I didn't really look too much into what he did the subsequent season until afterwards. And one thing that Fulham fans warned me of when we got Scott Parker is football so boring. It's pass, very position based, very defensive. He's quite happy to win 1-0. The thing is, Scott Parker at both Fulham and Bournemouth was blessed with 2 of the strongest teams in the league that season. Now, if you had put him in charge of Rotherham United, I think he would have no clue what to do. But then again, I say that, but he's shown that he's better with a side that is weaker. This is what I don't understand, because he has to go for it. He has to be bold. If he tried to defend, let's be honest, Chris, if he tried to defend in those first couple of months in the Championship, we would have been torn apart, because those youngsters had never played at that level before. They'd never played a professional game before. And we would have been torn to shreds. So he had to go for it. That was what he had to do. And I thought, as soon as he got the 37 points from 15 games, through that spell, I thought, well, we've got a fantastic manager here. He seems to, know what he's doing. Of course, David Brooks in that spell as well. Bless him, it was announced, of course, that he had lymphomas disease. So, of course, he was out. But he seemed to manage all that absolutely fine. It was when he had that full strength squad, of course, Brooks was still out for the season, but when he had that full strength squad back, it was like, okay, we can just sit back and we're going to try not to lose this game. Now, against Peterborough, that's ridiculous. Against Reading, that's ridiculous. Against Derby, that's ridiculous. They're all teams that are struggling at the wrong end of the table. Struggling, fighting for survival. You've got to go out, you've got to attack those teams, and you've got to beat them. To be fair, though, the teams are in and around us, we seem to have quite good records against. And that was because he did have to go out and he had to be bold and had to attack them.
Sounds very much like, again, no plan B there with him. And, we've had that. We've got a squad here. Well, I say we've got a squad. Let me rephrase that. We've got a five-a-side team here that we're going to have to build up from nothing. And it's going to need inspiring after the way that we walked into relegation. I don't see him as coming in and inspiring people. I mean, Bath Time here. And I respect what you're saying, Bath Time. You always do Parker Darren, Chris. He's incredibly experienced for his age, has long been seen as the brightest coach of his age around, and has played for over 20 different managers. Give him a chance. All right, Bath Time, let me just say, if Ten Hag was to walk out on United tomorrow, would you take Parker at United? Now, don't give me any of that. It's too big a job for him, or we're Man United, we can only have managers that have won things. Don't give me any of that shit. Just give me, would you take Parker at United if you did not have a manager? And I think the answer would be no, if I'm honest with you.
I do agree with part of what Bath Time's put there. He has got experience as a player. And that's why
so was Frank Lampard, so was Steven Gerrard.
Exactly. The thing is, with Scott Parker, is he was making these mistakes and wasn't learning from them. If you go back, and it's funny you say he has no plan B. If you go back, a couple of years and check my tweets, especially in that run-in, I would say probably about February, March time, I was saying exactly that. I said he's got no plan B. As soon as Kiefer Moore come into the fold, because, of course, we signed Kiefer Moore when he was injured. When he come back into the fold, I actually perked up and I thought, well, actually, he's got a plan B and a plan C. But then again, he was playing teams. He was playing Blackburn. He was playing Coventry. He was playing Forest. He had to go out and attack those teams, Chris. But, he didn't have to go out and attack Reading, or he didn't think that he had to, whereas that, if you give, that's a fairly easy 3 points. Derby, away. Again, they were fighting for their lives, but you look at the Bournemouth squad and look at the Derby squad, and you'd say, well, we should be beating them. And this was he's a frustrating manager.
Totally. And Bath Time there, I mean, I rest my case. He says, absolutely not. Okay, it says there, no European football managing experience. Okay, would you take him if you'd finished 9th this season, which in a rebuild season you could well have done, but well done on getting into the top 4. It was a great finish for United in this season. So would you have taken him if you'd finished 9th? I don't think you still would. No. I mean, look how you couldn't wait to get rid of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the end, and yet look at the experience he had as a player.
But the point I'm trying to make, though, Chris,
always say, but I think fans from other clubs have always got to say, "Oh, you're not being very nice to him." But then ask yourself, would you take him at your club? If we could take, and I'm going to go back. There's a player, David Speedy.
Mm-hmm.
He got. Before he came to Leicester, Blackburn was one, and the other one, I can't remember. I think he got 2 teams. He was promoted to the Premier League with 2 teams. And both times, they sold him as soon as they got into the Premier League because he was not a Premier League player. So when he signed for Leicester, and he ended up actually not playing in the playoff final that we were in that year because he was suspended, but part of his contract was that we would not sell him that first season we came up because he'd had enough of it. Yeah. Now, if we could say, right, let's get Scott Parker in, and you know what, Scott, we'll give you a 1-year rolling contract until we get promoted. But when we get promoted, you're shit in the Premier League, we're going to get somebody else. Then I might say, actually, I could probably see that working because he is good maybe at getting teams out of the Championship, and he has got that experience. But he's not. He's going to want to come, and why we don't give all managers 1-year rolling contracts, God only knows, saves us a fortune. But he won't want that. He'll want a 3 or 4 year contract, and he'll want to. But we know he'll bring us. If he does bring us up, he'll bring us straight back down again. It's why I had Bournemouth in the bottom 3 last season to go down. Not because it's Bournemouth, because I live here and I love you, and I wanted you to stay up because I thought we were. Because you had the Cardigan man prowling the touchline.
But if you look at the start we had, and he nearly stuffed that up. At Fulham, he did the same. And when they got into the Premier League, and this is beyond me, Mitrovic scored 40 goals across all competitions. I think it was 42 actually, across all competitions in the Championship when Fulham were promoted. And Scott Parker didn't play him really in the Premier League. And I just don't understand his tactical... He seems very tactically naive.
I want you to have a look at what Joe's just said, but let me just bring this up again from Bath time. Parker's not experienced enough for elite level management. Yeah. I would have to say at the moment, Manchester United are not an elite club. Manchester United are a club that are in the deep doo-doos who happen to have had a very good manager that pulled you through it this year. I didn't think you'd finish 4th. Are you elite at the moment? No. Are Manchester City elite at the moment? Yes. So let's just get, let's say, Bath time, I'm sorry, I love you to bits, but Man United are not the Man United that were about under Ferguson when you were untouchable. You're not anymore. You might well be in a couple of seasons' time. If you were that elite, you'd have won the FA Cup. You didn't. You finished 4th. You felt you were behind a Newcastle side that were rebuilding. So, yeah, elite, no. Come on, wind your neck in. And again, when you say to clubs like Bournemouth, like Leicester, why do you hate Man United fans? Because they think they're elite. They're not, I can remember before Ferguson, Liverpool were the elite team. You weren't even fitting good enough to wipe the boot. So, let's get a little bit of reality in here. But coming to this one, Craig, Bournemouth fans will always be a bit bitter towards Parker because of the way he spoke out when they left. Got them promotion. We've just been through a manager in Brendan Rodgers who bus drivers in Leicester could not get insurance because they were running over so many players that Brendan Rodgers was throwing under them. We don't want another one that's going to do that.
Do you know what? I'm the perfect person to answer this because, of course, on the way back from Liverpool, I was called up, Radio 606, Robbie Savage and Chris Sutton. Mm-hmm. And they said, "Oh, do you speak to him?" I said, yeah. obviously a bit pissed off. And I turned around and I said, he's got to go. Because I heard the comments. We were sat, of course, Liverpool, long way away. We were sat in a pub, had something to eat before we set off. And then I read this article, and it was like Scott Parker and what he had said. Now, don't get me wrong, they hadn't got all the words correct. To be honest, even when I reiterate it on my channel, I don't get it word to word right. But you could tell the general gist. And the thing was what a lot of people don't realise, Scott Parker actually said it before a ball was even kicked. So Maxim Denim went out and got Senesi for him. So he felt probably very let down. But saying that after a 9-0 defeat, when, again, you've got youngsters in there, you've got Jadon Anthony, Jordan Zamora, these players were starting out, yes, they'd had one season of championship football. It was always going to be difficult last season. It was always going to be tough. And Scott Parker come out and said that. And I said, he's got to go. He's got to go. It wasn't so much the manner of the defeat. It was probably the tactical naivety that, he showed that day. It was a case that we just sat back. We let Liverpool pass the ball around in front of us. Honestly, Chris, if you get the chance to watch that game again, it's an example of how not to play football. Sit there at the back, just let Liverpool pass it around. And what are Liverpool going to do once they pass it around? Because let's be fair, they've got some decent attackers. Mo Salah's always around, isn't he? And they've got players coming from everywhere. They're going to score against you. And then, of course, it was 2-0 after 6 minutes. I did a thank you video to Gary O'Neill, and I even had all the timings in there. And it was 5-0 at half time. It was embarrassing, but it wasn't embarrassing because the players weren't giving 110%. They were following the orders that Scott had put out. It was just a case that we were sat back there, and then Scott's got the audacity to come out and say, these players, they're not good enough. We're going to have a lot more defeats like this. Well, I bloody hope not. I hope that we're not going to get another 9-0 defeat in the season, because, to be honest, it's getting embarrassing. And we didn't. And to be perfectly honest, I think it's quite a good thing that he said what he did, come out, and we had somebody waiting in the wings. Of course, Gary O'Neill was brought in by Jonathan Woodgate, and we had somebody like that who was an assured head, somebody who was calm, somebody who was already popular with the players, who could pick them off the ground. Yeah. Because what Scott Parker said there could have been, well, it could have really damaged the whole side. But, and I know from speaking to Fletcher that plane journey back from Liverpool, they were silent on there. So I think Scott knew what he had done. Scott knew what he'd done. Yeah. But tactically, he's very naive, and he will then point the finger and make an excuse for other people.
Haven't we had one like that? And let me just say, I just realised. I've realised who Bath Time really is.
You know what? I'm Premier League. I am elite. I am proper elite. No. I am Gurinder.
Bath Time is Gurinder. That's who he is. Now we know. Third Bath Time, I apologise. But the point is, a Leicester fan. I mean, yeah, he is. That was the point I was making. Yeah, you're saying, that when people say, well, he's not that bad. Well, I wouldn't have him. No, thank you. Well, he hasn't got this. He hasn't. Oh, you wouldn't have him. It's not there's no caveats. You're saying that we should have him. Would you have him? But anyway, look, we had a manager who came out and said after we lost to Forest in an FA Cup final, as holders, that we needed a rebuild, and a bit like the Cardigan Man, that we we need a whole new rebuild and what have you. Well, that goes down well, doesn't it? And
Exactly.
this is a manager who had got us to fifth twice, who had won us the FA Cup. Now you could argue that VAR and Chilwell's big right toenail helped in that. We weren't that good towards the end. We were holding on. But he took those players and made them worthless on the transfer front. He then, his excuses of against Brentford on the opening day, it was too hot, and he made 2 substitutions. We lost to Southampton, who were the worst team in the world. Sorry, worst team in the world, possibly, but they were the worst team in the Premier League. We lost to them twice. And he said, do you know what, though? My team, they're too young. They don't, they're still learning. And yet Southampton, who had just beaten us, had the youngest team ever from a Premier League team on the pitch at that point. The guy talked a load of bullshit. I do not want him to be replaced by another. One of those is enough. And it just sounds when he went, and my argument, I've said this many times, is that Top had no idea. There was no pre-planning, no plan B from Top that, well, if he has to go, and look how bad the season's going, who are we going to get in? There was no pre-thought there. And we gave it to Adam Sadler, who was the first team coach, whose idea of trying to change things around was to keep it exactly the same. But I don't, thank God he didn't get the job full time. And I don't want another one of those because we've just been through that.
Mm-hmm. I personally think, Brendan Rodgers and Scott Parker are very, very similar. The first excuse that you come out with against Brentford, it's too hot. Well, it's the same for Brentford as it is for Leicester.
What substitutions.
Stupid thing to say, about a young team. There's teams that are younger, but at the same time, what Brendan Rodgers didn't do, and this is what Brighton do well, Brentford do well, we've started to do well, is if there is, say for example, Jamie Vardy, Vardy's been a fantastic player for Leicester, but we both know, because it's happening to me at the moment, whereas 5 years ago I could run on the treadmill and I was absolutely fine, I wasn't knackered at all. Whereas now,
you have a treadmill?
No, I went to the gym, but
no, I'm just
whereas now,
been on a treadmill looking at you. Really?
Whereas now, cheers, Chris. The legs have gone, and that is what that's why I wanted to go out with the example of Jamie Vardy. Brendan Rodgers didn't actually think, right, okay, what do I do? Of course, Vardy is coming to the twilight of his career. Brendan Rodgers was a football player. He should have realised, right, okay, he's coming to the twilight of his career. He can't play every single game. We need to get somebody who is adequate, and can do his job to actually eventually replace him. And he hasn't done that. Kasper Schmeichel, you can say he didn't replace him. I know that there's been difficulties, of course, with the owners. And of course they were hit badly by COVID, but at the same time, Brendan Rodgers hasn't helped himself as well. No. He plays again this very defensive style of football. You could say that the players would be used to that, but you play like that for too long, like some sides have found in the Championship before, and eventually those parachute payments stop. And you get stuck down there.
It's a very difficult position to be in. And I was saying this again last night on my show with Rob Tanner, because it's the sort of manager, it's like when we took on Martin O'Neill. He had no experience at our level, but wow, that, again, thanks to Claridge's shin in the 94th minute, whatever it was, that hadn't gone in, who knows. But look, he stepped up to the mark. It is a big gamble. We've got to get this one right. Now, for me, I know it's going to cost us more to get somebody in that's already in a job. But if they're already still in a job, then they're doing something right. It's like if, when Brendan Rodgers 3 seasons ago was being linked with Barcelona, Manchester United, Spurs. Where does he look like he's going? Oh, tail between the leg back to Celtic. I'm sure they'll give you a warm welcome there, Brendan. But don't get somebody when they're at the peak of the career. And some managers only have so long. And, Liverpool fans said this, that to me, there's 2 managers out there that my first 2 choices. One, John Tomlinson at Blackburn Rovers.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one.
And one is Kieran, and I've forgotten his surname, the guy that's come up from Ipswich, brought Ipswich up.
Oh, is it McKenna?
Yes, that's it, Kieran McKenna, yeah. Now, to me, both of those are in a job. So that says, oh, hang on a second, they've both got lower division experience, which we need. They both can go and say, these are, and yes, we've got Martin Glover free now, and, he's coming in and he's been in now a while, so he's got, players in mind. But we're back, we're not shopping in Aldi like we were 12 years ago. But we're certainly not shopping at Sainsbury's or Waitrose, which we have been doing for a few years. We're back to Asda, right? Let's be honest with you. That's where we're going to be shopping now. And it's, if you put somebody in that's been shopping at Sainsbury's or Waitrose for the last 10 years, and oh my God, what's this? Own brand? Oh my God, no. But they're used to those divisions. They can pick players out they know. We're being linked, and we'll talk about him tonight, a guy from Blackpool, a striker, with what we said about Vardy possibly being his last season. We've been linked with him. I don't know anything about him. But Tomlinson will. McKenna possibly will, because they've been down there. So, we've got to get it right. Just to me, Parker does not bring anything new to the table. And we are a club. And if you were in, and I'm just going to say, sorry, before we go any further, a very warm welcome. And thank you so very much, Rowan Tree, just become a new member. Thank you so very, very much, Rowan. Really do appreciate that. Thank you very much, our newest member. If you want to become a member, by the way, Craig's a member, but not in the same way.
You always stitch me up when I come on here. I'll stop doing it, shouldn't I?
You can stitch yourself
I love
up
it,
most
really.
of the time. But look, $1.99 a month. It helps run Leicester Till I Die TV. Loyalty badge and emojis, custom badges, member shout outs, comments will always be shown if not read out. Exclusive YouTube posts, and the discounted merchandise, live chat and show if you want to come on, and also exclusive quiz as well now just for members. So Rowan, thank you so very, very much for that. I really, really do appreciate it, and thank you very much. Leicester fans got to go, so goodbye to you. Where was we before we talked about your member? What was I saying? Oh yeah, that was it. If Bournemouth were where Leicester are now, so you've been in the let's say when I know as a club you looked at him when Eddie Howe went, but when you went down last time, you were in a similar position. You started to lose 1 or 2 players. You had to lose some because of the wages. You'd been in the Premier League of almost as long as us, really, hadn't you? Less one season. Yeah. Would you have said that Parker was the right man for you in that position, which is basically the position Leicester are in?
Well, if we had gone down this season and say, for example, Gary O'Neill had left the club, I would have said no. Most definitely not. Was Parker the right man for us back that season? Well, he got off to a fantastic start, but I'll throw the question back to you. If a team starts with 37 points from 15 games, which, if you remember the first time Fulham were promoted, that was the sort of figures that, and they went on under Jean Tiganana, and he managed to get them, to a very, very good points haul. and into the Premier League, you would expect us to win that league at a canter, wouldn't you?
Mm.
And that is why I say no, most definitely not. I don't think he's the right man for Leicester. I don't think he's the right man for Leeds. I think he's probably, with regards to how he sets up, he's probably more suited to Leicester than he is Leeds. You know, but that doesn't mean you should go for him, because I think, and do you want my honest opinion of who you should?
Yes, no, do give it me.
You know, I've got a lot of time for Carlos Corberán, but personally, I'd give it to Dean Smith. I'd carry on, because I think, you know, he had a good end to the season. You know, he will be able to regroup those players. He has got a track record of getting teams out of the Championship. He's actually got quite a decent track record of trying to keep teams in the Premier League. And I think he will do a good job if given the time. Let's be fair, he hasn't had a transfer window at Leicester. No. He hasn't had any time at Leicester. He would make the most sense. Carlos Corberán, you know, I think is another manager who I think would be fantastic. Probably changed style up a little bit. Why I think he might end up at Leeds is because of the Marcelo Bielsa link. Yeah. And Leeds is another funny one. And that is why I give the example with how Bournemouth went from a very, very attacking, flowing team to the Scott Parker side, which was scraping results towards the end of that season. Because I think, you know, Leeds have done that, but in the Premier League. So they've gone from Bielsa to Jesse Marsh, and then gone to Javi Gracia, who's even worse, and then Sam Allardyce just as hit and hope and try and stay up. Yeah. Whereas Carlos Corberán would be taking it back to basics for them and taking it back to the Bielsa sort of way. It might not work straight away, but I wouldn't be surprised if Leeds, if they did that, would be up within 2 seasons. And likewise, I think with Leicester, if you stick with Dean Smith, again, it might not work straight away, but he'll be able to put his own stamp on things. And he has got a good track record in this division.
If it turned out, and like I say, what I'm hearing is that it's going to be certainly by the end of the week. Like I say, we don't need somebody. I've never refreshed the athletics pages as much as I am doing at the moment to see whether there's anything new happening. And like I say, I there's so much I want to say, but I can't because I've been sworn to secrecy. But it is hopefully by the end of the end of the week. If it was, I don't think it would be Dean Smith, because I think that would have been the quick, easy option. And like you say, I'm just looking at when I did a sell or avoid, and we got Dean Smith as a keep, because yes, if he can keep hold of Shakespeare and possibly Terry as well, and there's no reason why not. For the exact reasons you've said, I would be happy with Dean Smith. I think he is not, you know, maybe if we get back up, we'd have to see where we go. With all managers, we have to do that. But he has got that, you know, he did set the wheels in motion for Brentford. He did get Villa promoted. He did make Grealish £1 billion player, where Rodgers has taken a 70 million Maddison and made him worth about 30. You know, so he has got that experience. He couldn't keep us up, but then I don't blame him for that.
No, I think the damage was already done. They kept hold of Rodgers way too long. You look at Rodgers and his career throughout the years, and he's got a situation where I think he goes a bit stale. And again, he's a little bit like one of these managers that doesn't really know how to change things. Yes. And I did this, you know, and of course he walked into Liverpool, did well at Liverpool, but then again he was walking into a team with Gerrard, walking in with to a team with lots of decent players. And you know where I'm going with this. At Leicester, he walked into a team with quality at that point. Celtic, well, let's be honest, there's only two teams in bloody Scottish football. And there's Celtic and Rangers.
Yes.
Watford, of course, he made his name. Did a fairly decent job there. The team, I would say, and you've got to look at this spell, and with regards to Rodgers, have a look at his time when he was manager of Reading, and have a look at what he did there. He had no clue, because they were on their backsides, how to turn that team around, and ended up getting sacked. I don't know how long it was after, but he got sacked fairly quickly from there. And that is Brendan Rodgers down to a T.
Yes.
And that is what Scott Parker is. He doesn't really know. He's tactically naive. He'll make silly substitutions. Going to Liverpool and not actually laying a glove on them is firstly naive and stupid. And, wow. Let's be honest. As soon as we won
to end on though, and I appreciate your time, I really do.
Yeah.
You've. Well, I don't think I needed much convincing, to be honest. I think I was pretty much there.
To be honest, Chris, you'd probably want me in charge of Leicester rather than Scott Parker. Honestly, I just think
the interesting way that it's going is that, with Brendan Rodgers goes back to Celtic, and I can see that happening because he's got the brass neck to think that they'd lay out the red carpet for him. Well, he doesn't know that half the fan base would be walking up behind him with daggers in their hands, or empty beer bottles because it's Glasgow, isn't it?
Well, exactly.
But apparently, if he goes back to Celtic, and the new favourite for the Leicester job, and I read absolutely nothing into this, A, because of what I've been told, and B, because, let's face it, odds change every day. And as we always say, when we talk about betting, don't do it. It's not an answer to everything. And when the fun stops, stop. But it says here, latest Leicester City news, as former manager looks set to return to Old Club, possibly opening door for Man City assistant Enzo Marchesa to join the Foxes. But again, I'm blinded by the fact that he's coming from Man City. He was absolutely useless at Parma, and again, is that the sort of football we want in the chat? Well, is that the sort of football that will get us out of the Championship?
Well, Brendan Rodgers was at Chelsea before he went to Watford. And this is a good Chelsea side. This is a Chelsea side working under Jose Mourinho. Being number two to Pep Guardiola, or being, number two to whoever. Like, for example, what we found out with Jason Tindall doesn't always ensure success.
No.
And that was highlighted big style because Eddie, fantastic manager, he is on a different level. And I made a video about him being England manager. He will be England manager at some point in his life. Whether or not he's going to take that, the next time it comes up, or take that in 10 years' time when he might think, okay, I want a little bit of break from club football, but the international football sounds quite fun. That's another thing. But the thing is that Jason Tindall was never a manager, and who's to say that this guy at Man City is exactly the same? Yeah. Sometimes the best managers, the best players, don't always make the best managers.
Arteta's taking his while, but again, if you get that Arsenal are an elite club and therefore expect an elite manager to get them elite results.
To be honest, Arteta's one of the ones that you can make an example of, because I think
most fans would say that, but in fairness, we're not Arsenal fans, so it's not for us to judge. But I'd have been happy with what Arteta's managed. But look,
definitely.
But it's the same with let's just look at Craig Shakespeare, number 2 under Nigel Pearson. It was getting us up from the third tier to the first tier to keeping us up. Stayed as number 2 under Ranieri. got us to, won the title, got us to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. In fairness, we'd got one foot in it when he took over anyway.
Yeah.
But he then became manager when we sacked Ranieri. Kept us up, yes, but didn't, unfortunately, take that step further, and he went the following season. Now he's back from outer space, as they say. So, yes, it doesn't work. But I just think, like I say, to me, I think Gerrard, we're lucky that he's gone to Saudi Arabia. There's always somebody to thank for things. Thank you, Saudi Arabia. We love you. I'm so glad that Frank Lampard's not been mentioned yet. I know Brad will be disappointed with that one, but no, look, what will be, I'm sure.
Lampard would be even worse than Parker, Chris, because at the end of the day, he hasn't actually got out the Championship.
That is true.
He's just been given.
But he has nearly taken Everton there twice, was it? And he saved them once, and.
I don't think he gets any points for taking Everton out of the top flight for
Unless
the first time.
He could well have done it with Chelsea if he stayed there long enough. Anyway, hey, look, congratulations on staying up. Good luck next season. Mate. Like I say, who talks about the Premier League anymore? It's last season. We're not bothered. But good luck, mate, in this coming season. Hopefully, in 12 months' time, we'll be playing you again. Who knows? But
I think I'm optimistic, actually, because I think, personally, the three teams that come up, I think Burnley are probably a bit different. But Luton, I think, will really struggle.
Yes.
Actually, on my interview with Mark McAdam, that's literally gone live an hour ago, he had a chat with the Luton chairman after that Wembley win, and their view is to pocket that 160 million, which is going to build a legacy around that, build a training ground, build a stadium. So I don't think they're going to do much, and I think they're going to really struggle. Sheffield United have got all sorts of finance problems, and then you have got Everton.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you'll come down. I'm just hoping we'll come up and play you in the Premier League. But yes, I think.
Yeah, I think
you'll be fine. But,
I think if you can get promoted straight out of it, I think we'll be playing each other the following season, because I think the three teams that will go down this season, I think, and this is no disrespect to Luton and Sheffield United, but I think they are going to be a cut adrift, and I think Everton will get a points deduction. To be honest, they should really have had one this season.
You see, that I did say at the start that this was another show for another occasion, but yes, I think if you're going to deduct points at the time of it happening, which is this season, next season, because it's given them another season in the Premier League when they don't deserve it. And if they'd have had points deduction, Leicester, obviously we would have been the main beneficiaries because we finished 18th, but who knows, if it happened earlier in the season. But Craig, look, thanks so much for coming on, mate. I know you've got a dog to walk. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't call your good lady that, should
I? Oh dear.
Oh dear.
I'll be in the doghouse.
Yes, you will. Hey, at least I'm not resurrecting your mother again. But,
Oh, for God's sake, Chris.
All the best, mate. Take care. I'm going to say good luck for next season.
Yeah, likewise, mate. All the best, mate.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Thanks very much to Craig there. I am sure we will be speaking to him again before next season, at some point. But I don't think they're going to come down next season. But we'll see. We will. Don't worry, we'll cut it out. It's not live. No, will we come back up? It depends who is going to be in that hot seat. We will know by the end of the season. If it's the one that I'm being hinted at, then I wouldn't be disappointed. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't be disappointed. And I know Craig's holding on because he's going to be asking me who it is, but I can't tell him. He's going to ask me anyway. But look, I'm going to be back in 2 hours, and I'll be joined by Jack from The Final Whistle, another good Leicester channel, and we'll be having a little discussion about transfers with the transfer window opening today. But thank you so very, very much, like I say, to Craig. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to all the members, and especially our new member, Rowan Tree. Thank you so very much for that. I'm looking forward to doing the member-only shows next season, and there'll be one of those a month at least. Don't forget...
Did you know we're on Twitter too? Connect with us there and get involved.
We are LTID TV. This has been LTID TV. I've been Chris. I'll be back just like this guy. See you at 8.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.